The following video is for PrivateEquity.com. Today I wanted to run through the private equity career plan. As I explained in an accompanying blog post, a private equity career plan is your step-by-step guide to landing a job in private equity or transitioning into private equity. It's important in any career move to plan ahead, and a private equity career plan is an ideal way to make the steps and deadlines and the status to track all of these different steps that you'll need to complete your career in private equity. Now, as you'll see in this Word document, you can see all the career steps and what you need to do to complete each of these and move on to the next phase in your private equity career pursuit. Now, we speak with a lot of different private equity professionals, some aspiring, some current, some they're interns, people at different levels of their private equity career, and very rarely do I see them have a career path plan like this. But at the same time, a lot of them have used different modifications and variations of this to sort of plan their career out. It might be in a journal that they use for a business that they've sort of mapped out the different plans, or it might be just in a conversation they've had with a colleague or a mentor. They've sort of planned out what they need to do, or they might just be doing it in their head. But it's also extremely rare that I find a private equity professional who doesn't have any form of career plan in their mind, at least. And I think it's a smart idea just to map this all out and have that available as a resource for you as you begin your seeking the private equity career. So to begin, we're going to look at the ultimate goal, which is to start my private equity career with a leading private equity firm in the energy sector. Obviously, this is just an example that we've used, and it might just be just to start your private equity career with any private equity firm if you don't have any experience and you're really just looking to get into the industry. You might not have that specific focus, but for the purposes of this, I thought it might be nice to have a little bit of a niche. You can also do geographical focus. You might just only want to find Texas-based private equity firms, which will narrow down the pool a little bit, and it will also allow you to focus your networking efforts, your outreach to different prospective employers, your internships will all be geared towards Texas-based firms, and that gives you a little bit of specification so that you're not going too broad. So to start with, I've created just a really basic career plan here. So you have the 3 columns with different headers of required steps. So these are the step-by-step, different objectives that you'll have to complete in order to get to your inevitable goal, which is, of course, to start a private equity career with a leading private equity firm. And it's helpful for me to have a sort of a timeline, and this might vary, whether it takes a little longer for you to get a private equity internship or it takes a little longer for you to get hired. I might not hit this January 1st, 2015 deadline, but in my opinion, it's always ideal to have some sort of timeline to work with so you can set those parameters and those deadlines. So for this one, it's January 1st, 2015 is when we're looking to get hired by a private equity firm and complete the plan, and that's the last step. So that's what we're always looking forward to. And right now it's a bit daunting. As you can see, a lot of it's red, meaning that those steps haven't been completed. But just as a little bit of inspiration, and I got this from a colleague of mine. Whenever he makes a plan or a to-do list, he always the first thing he puts on there is a complete to-do list. And so it's just a way to start off on at least getting something done, so it's not so daunting. But at the same time, I like to keep all this red so that you see that you still have these to get done, and so you still have a lot of pressure on you. But as you can do in the first one, you can get things done pretty easily if you just apply yourself. And so these are some really basic steps. It'll be a little more specific when you have an actual career plan and specific to your career. For instance, if I was looking to apply to a local private equity firm, I might reach out to my colleague Josh and see if he can set up an interview with the employer, or sit me down with coffee for him. And so that might just be a modification on these steps, but just take it with a grain of salt. This is a general guideline, and you'll obviously change it to fit your needs. So to start with, obviously, it's create a private equity career plan. Completed that today, so that's marked as complete. And then the next part would be to self-review your resume. And this is something that we just have to preach to death, I suppose, because a lot of people they'll send us resumes to review, or they'll send a resume if they want to get hired by the private equity investment group and work with us on the PrivateEquity.com team. They'll send us their own resume, and it's pretty apparent that they haven't reviewed it themselves. And this is just an easy step to start with. You always want to review your own. Make sure that it's your best work, it's your best product out there that you can get, because it's important for any employer that will see this. You don't have any typos or glaring mistakes. So thought that was an easy one to get done. So that's a January 1st deadline. And then it's always good to get another pair of eyes on your resume, and especially it's nice to have a colleague or a mentor or somebody ideally who works in private equity to review the resume and see what they might do differently. And this is also a great way to find your next steps, because a lot of private equity professionals have great advice, as you've heard in a lot of our private equity audio interviews at PrivateEquity.com /radio. You can hear that some of these private equity professionals we always ask for tips have said a lot of different things, whether it's learning a different language if you're trying to work in a European private equity firm because it's so global. They'll give you this sort of advice if you reach out to a private equity executive or professional to review your resume. They might say, oh, this is missing, or you should take the private equity certification program, or you should enroll in this course in university, or you should speak to this professor or this private equity executive, or join this networking group. They'll give you all sorts of advice like that that might bolster your resume, but also give you the next steps to complete. So that's always a good step. And at the very least, you should have a family member, or colleague, or somebody you respect who you think can give a lot of insights into how you can better your resume, or at least catch all the typos that you might have missed in the second step here. So that's always good, but you should be able to put that out as soon as you get the self-review done. You can put that out to your colleague. Next, if you're going to order the regional private equity database, we obviously segment our own database for purchase, but whether you do it yourself, you can find a lot of these contact information, especially if you narrow it down. That's one of the reasons that I suggested cutting this down to maybe Texas-based firms or New York-based firms. It at least limits that a little bit, so you can do some of your own homework, regardless of whether you purchase a database or you borrow somebody's or whatever you do. You can source it yourself, so you can look out and see what Texas-based firms are there, and you can see, okay, there's this many, and how many of them have an energy focus or an energy fund in the last 10 years. And that's just a great way to start it off, because then you're going to use it for your next step, which, if you have more experience, you're probably not going to complete an internship. But if you're looking to transition into the industry and you don't have that much experience, you might want to be completing an internship, and that could be a crucial first step. So you'll be identifying the best private equity firms for that internship, and a great way to start is with a database, or with any internal contact information you have, or somebody or some list of firms that you might find that fit your criteria. Then you're going to send out your resume and cover letter, any information they might want, to those top 25 firms, or however many. I always like to widen the pool to as many as I can that fit the criteria. And you're going to send those out, and I've set an ideal date, March 31st, 2014. And for me, this is set with somebody who already has a career, and they're already working full time, or they're going to school full time. If you're unemployed, or you're in transition or anything, it's usually easier. You can kind of accelerate this timeline, because you're not going to wait till 2015. If you're unemployed, that's just not a really reasonable timeline for you. So you're obviously going to spend a little less time on each of these steps, or you might just spend more time in a shorter window. But for somebody who's a busy professional or a busy student, it's great to be able to send this and the cover letter out by at least by March 31st. And then you can follow up with the internship contacts. So maybe you had an interview, or maybe you got some email response. You can always follow up, or if you didn't, you can call them in or send an email. Any way that you can kind of reach back with these firms is always a great idea, so that you stay on their mind. And then, ideally, you've started your summer private equity internship May 1st, 2014, and so you can mark that as complete, obviously. And then completing a summer course on valuation might be a nice way to shore up your resume if you're a little short on that area. And then the next step would be to start a local private equity investment group networking chapter. So for our group, we have a lot of members. We have about 110,000, I think the last time I checked, in the private equity investment group on LinkedIn, as well as on PrivateEquity.com. We have our membership area there. And so a good step for you if you're trying to expand your network base, you could start a local chapter, and that's a great way to make some local connections and meet some new people in the area, and also find some different private equity firms that might be possible employers for you down the line. Another step is to attend at least 3 private equity events. This is always a good goal, to get out there and make some new connections and be in the community of the people you hope to work with. So I've set this for September 1st, 2014. It can change, but it's always good to have some sort of timeline on it. Then the next step is to request and receive private equity internship reference. So you're going to reach out to your former private equity intern supervisor and hopefully get a letter of recommendation with that as well. And it's always nice to have in hand. It shows what you did in the internship, whether they liked you. Hopefully they would, obviously, but you have to get an honest opinion from that internship, and then be able to use that in your applications and as you seek employment later on. It's always good to send a thank you to the intern supervisor, and then ask for any openings. It's never hurts to ask and see if they really liked your services. We had an intern a few months ago that I really liked. Did a lot of great work for us, and we were all really happy with the level of work he contributed to the team. And so if he ever reached out to me with to ask any openings once he's finished with school, obviously, I definitely consider that. And if it was right now, I might hire him right off the bat. It always depends, but it's always great to keep in touch with those people and make sure that that you're on the top of their mind if you do want to work with them later on. Another idea as you're moving forward is to research the top 100 private equity employers. Send your resume, your application, and cover letter out to those private equity employers. This is a little bit similar to one of the early steps, which is identifying the best private equity firms for your internship. But you want to see, now that you've got this experience, you might know a little bit more about what you want to do in the industry. You might find that you want to be on the buy side, or it can all depend. You might find a particular affinity for marketing, or for portfolio management, or working in the portfolio companies. You'll find your little niche of expertise, and that might change how you want to approach your research for these top 100 private equity employers. Then you're going to find the contact details and send out to those potential hires. You're also going to want to look out at any of the job listing websites, Monster.com, the eFinancial, all those different websites that have open positions. That'll be a good way for you to source different private equity employers. And so the date for this is October 1st, 2014, but it's also the date of the next one, which is to complete the Certified Private Equity Professional designation. This is one that I've shamelessly self-promoted. That's our program out there is the CPEP. But it might be that you complete a different course, or however you go about it. But it's always good to have goals with the same dates, because you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can be reaching out to different employers, and you can also be studying for your exam in the CPEP program, etc. And so that's why I've made a point of setting those at the same day, at the same time for the deadline. And hopefully you get one done faster than the other, and keep going with it, and you can move on to the next step, which would be to contact different private equity professionals for interview tips, coaching, advice. At this point, you've probably sent out your resume and application and cover letter to a number of different employers, and you might be hearing back. You might be scheduling interviews, and it's always good to reach out to your network that you've now built through the earlier steps. Now you can reach out to those people and ask for advice on setting up an interview, on how to go about doing those interviews and what questions you can anticipate, what holes you might have in your credentials that you want to be prepared to address, and other just different general advice. It might just be on how to dress. It could be as simple as that. And so it's always good to reach out to that network and build from that. So I set the deadline there for November 1st, 2014. And then the next step is to add your resume to